I imagine you're going to hear a lot of, or see a lot of PowerPoint presentations, so I'm going to not give you a PowerPoint presentation. Start easy. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all here today to what I call Lansdowne Road, and which I've spent a lot of time in over the years as a rugby fan. Today will probably be a slightly more sober experience than I usually have here, but I hope it'll be a very rewarding one, and I'm sure it will be. Today is also International Women's Day, so can I just acknowledge, it gives me an opportunity to acknowledge the increasing role that women are playing in the agri-food sector in Ireland. And in fact, I have to leave after I speak because we are having a celebration of International Women's Day in the Department of Agriculture. I want to commend Jerry Boyle and Teagasc for this really important initiative. The aim of this exercise, of course, is to identify the key technologies that will drive the future potential of the Irish agri-food sector over the next 20 years in terms of competitiveness, innovation, sustainability and growth. And I appreciate that this report, this really excellent report, I must say, has required a great deal of hard work, especially by those on the steering committee and in the various working groups, and I would congratulate them. And I'd particularly like to acknowledge the contribution of my own former colleague, Tom Moran, for his leadership of the steering committee. I'm sure Tom did an excellent job, as he always does. Back in a few years ago, 2002, 2008, I had the privilege of being on the steering committee of a major global exercise called the International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science and Technology for Development, a catchy kind of title. I asked it. It was a massive exercise led by the World Bank and the UN, involving 400 scientists around the world, 800 stakeholder groups, modelled on the International Panel for Climate Change. And the reason that the World Bank and the UN saw such a huge undertaking as worthwhile was because they recognised the crucial role of technology in meeting some of the greatest global challenges we face today, in reducing and eliminating hunger and rural poverty, and promoting sustainable livelihoods, human health and nutrition. The Irish government and my own minister, Simon Coveney in particular, have been to the forefront in more recent times in the EU and internationally in challenging the world to address seriously and coherently the great twin challenges of feeding the growing global population while protecting and enhancing our environment. Globally, as you know, we face the challenge to produce 60% more food by 2050, while reversing soil degradation, and 25% of the world's soils are seriously degraded, reducing water use. Agriculture uses 70% of water globally, fresh water, and reducing climate emissions in agriculture and related land uses. For Ireland, with our strong base in free-range, grass-fed livestock systems, this offers great opportunities and challenges for us. For example, as our dairy sector expands, we will be challenged to ensure this does not compromise water quality. And given our high proportion of climate emissions from agriculture in this country, we will have to be the best in the world when it comes to the climate efficiency of our production systems, and that absolutely is our ambition. And the environmental sustainability of our production systems must be matched by their economic sustainability, so that our food companies continue to grow and be a primary producer of jobs in rural Ireland, an issue that was getting much coverage post-election. And our farmers earn a decent living and have the resilience to cope with increasingly volatile food markets, as we're seeing now in the dairy sector. Technology is not the whole answer to these great challenges, but it has a huge role to play. As you know, last year the Department launched FoodWise 2025, the new industry-led strategy for the agri-food sector. And at the heart of FoodWise is the message that environmental protection and economic competitiveness are equal and complementary. And it enthusiastically endorsed technology and practices that result in more efficient use of resources in order to achieve this. The FoodWise report identified competitiveness challenges at both farm and processing level, and called for productivity improvements through the development and application of cutting-edge technology. It said that innovation and human capital will be key to this. And if you were to think of a single core theme inside FoodWise, it was about the idea of having the right people using the right technology at the forefront of what we are doing in the agri-food sector. So you can see the Teagasc Technology Foresight report fits very neatly into the national foodwise strategy. It directly meets the challenge to identify technologies that can help us on our path of sustainable growth. Innovation 2020, another document, the recently agreed overarching government strategy for research, development, science and technology, sets out the strategy and roadmap for making Ireland a global innovation leader with a strong, sustainable economy and healthy society. And the government has strongly emphasised the cross-sectoral nature of this. The strategy reaffirms that public investment in research will continue to be focused on 14 areas that were identified as providing particular market opportunities in a very detailed national prioritisation exercise a couple of years ago. And 2 of those 14 areas were in the food sector. These 14 areas have been further grouped into 6 broad enterprise themes, and again, food is one of them, as you would expect. And within this national framework, my own department published a detailed strategic research and innovation agenda last year with the catchy title of SHARP, the Sustainable Healthy Agri-Food Research Plan. And I'm happy to see that many of the themes and elements of SHARP are picked up and developed further in this new Technology Foresight report. Innovation 2020 also notes that Ireland is particularly attractive to multinationals as a testbed because, as the saying goes, we're small enough to trial yet large enough to prove. And this certainly applies in the food area, where we know, for example, the infant formula manufacturers based here link up strongly with Teagasc and others to develop their products and ingredients. And there is huge scope to build further on this in the really important health and nutrition segment of the food sector. The department and its research agencies, including Teagasc and the Marine Institute, contributed hugely to the development of Innovation 2020, and I can assure you we will be very active players in its implementation. I want to say a few words, if I may, about the 5 areas that have been picked out in the Foresight report. Firstly, just on genomics. This is huge potential in our sector, and in the animal sector we've already seen that the model adopted in Ireland for dairy and beef, where all stakeholders cooperate together in the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, has helped put in place a world-class breeding programme. And it's clearly delivering for Irish farmers. The Dairy Breeding Index has delivered an estimated €750 million to the dairy sector since its launch in 2002, with more than half of this directly attributable to the genomic work since 2009. Genomics is actually more than double the rate of genetic gain in the dairy herd. In the beef herd, recent work by ICBF has indicated that the genetic gain in the new Eurostar replacement index is expected to deliver an additional €400 million in profit for farmers over the next 15 years. And again, half of this is directly attributable to the implementation of genomics through the department's beef data and genomics scheme. And as part of that scheme, farmers can expect to see a doubling of the reliability of the Eurostar evaluations for their animals once genotyped. It's also the case that by improving livestock genetics, we're making a vital contribution to improving climate efficiency of our livestock industry. And that's hugely important to the future of that industry. We are investing €300 million in this scheme, in the beef data genomics scheme, and this will significantly accelerate the process of improving both climate and economic efficiency in beef production in this country. The discovery of a vitally important role that microscopic life forms play in the general health and well-being of animals, people and the planet is another area that's opened up a whole new range of possibilities for the future. Arguably, we're now at a turning point in the availability of technologies that will accelerate progress in this domain, not only to improve understanding, but to drive the development of new tools for managing and manipulating microbiota for the benefit of the host, the farmer, the consumer, and the environment. And the opportunities in this space, I know, are very exciting and broad-ranging, and I'm sure that will be something you'll be discussing today. Turning to the third theme is very difficult for an Irish person to say, isn't it? The third theme in the Foresight report, there's no doubt that the digital technology has huge potential to transform the future of Irish agriculture through applications in sensing, analytics, automation, and so on. Now, to exploit this in a way that is beneficial all along the value chain is a real challenge for us. This will require genuine partnerships built on trust that often involve a mix of public and private participants and funding. We must find ways of assembling and linking data from a myriad of different sources and ensuring that the owners of that data also share in the benefits of its exploitation. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this in recent times, including a seminar, I think, here that Teagasc hosted, and I would urge that these efforts continue. The department, with its agencies, is the custodian of a lot of data, and we will, I guarantee, play a full part in those discussions. ICT, sensors, smart machinery, these can all play a big role in the sustainable intensification of our agri-food sector as advocated by Foodwise. At processing level, the deployment of novel technologies and tools to quantify and forecast food safety challenges will underpin the safety and quality attributes of Irish food in the future. And there's quite simply nothing more important than any technology that keeps us to the forefront internationally on food safety. Meanwhile, the development and manufacture of new high-value nutrition and wellness products must be a key priority. This is an area where we do have, of course, significant strength in some of our companies, but the potential for the future is absolutely vast. On the bioeconomy aspect, of course, in Ireland, in an Irish context, the bioeconomy consists primarily of agriculture, food, forestry, and the marine, all within the remit of my department. And a fully functioning bioeconomy would aim for an innovative, resource-efficient and competitive society that reconciles food security with the sustainable production of renewable biological resources for industrial purposes, while ensuring environmental and climate protection. So back to those same themes again. The EU published its bioeconomy strategy in 2012, and it aims to change the approach to using and managing biological resources in order to cope with local needs and the global challenges that I referred to earlier. And for Ireland, there's huge potential to increase the multifunctional use of our land and sea, starting from the principle of ensuring the production of safe, healthy and nutritious food. Building on the bioeconomy concept has the potential not only to improve the sustainability of primary production and processing industries, but also develop entire non-food value chains. For example, and very importantly, the application of technology to convert biomass, including what we now regard as waste from agriculture and the byproducts of the food processing sector, into valuable non-fossil chemicals and plastics. This is a really exciting area, but it's one that we have not well developed in Ireland, and it is a challenge for the future. Of course, one of the great challenges of technology always is to get it adopted by those at whom it's targeted. And in agriculture, that's a particular challenge. Younger, more educated, more progressive farmers are more likely to adopt new technologies. And there's therefore a clear link between technology adoption and the structures and absorption capacities at farm level. And I want to acknowledge and recognise the policy challenge in that for me and my colleagues. We have taken quite a number of measures to promote the necessary structural change, but there's no doubt that more needs to be done. Of course, success of any new technology ultimately depends on consumer protection and acceptance of its impact on the food they eat and the environment in which they live. And communication is therefore critically important, especially with the citizens who provide the taxes to pay for the public research. And I want to be honest with you on this point. I don't think we do this well. In fact, I think we're lousy at it, to be perfectly honest. I know that scientists often lament the misunderstandings and myths that are prevalent in public debate about scientific issues. And this is nowhere more true than in relation to food. And it is convenient and possible to blame the media for this. But in my view, the primary responsibility lies with ourselves, scientists, policymakers, industry and farmers. We all need to up our game in terms of communication with citizens and consumers. My department invests over €150 million annually in research, education and extension. We do this through our funding for Teagasc, the Marine Institute, other agencies, and through our own competitive funding programmes, the Food Industry Research Measure, the Stimulus Fund and COFORD for forestry. And all of these publicly funded programmes help build and maintain capacity, critical mass and train capability in our research organisations. Unfortunately, business expenditure on R&D in Ireland is low compared to similar countries in the EU, and we know that we lag even further behind in the food sector, particularly in Irish-owned firms, despite some very major and very well-known exceptions. There are signs that this is changing, and I really welcome that, particularly through public-private collaboration in Enterprise Ireland and Science Foundation Ireland sponsored centres, and I congratulate everybody involved in that. But we've got to do more, and we have to do it working together. Finally, and in conclusion, I just want to return to where I started, and that is with the challenge of identifying, developing and applying the very best technologies to drive the sustainable growth of the agri-food sector. And in doing so, and this is an important point certainly for me, and in doing so to help meet some of the greatest global challenges of our time. That's the vision set out in FoodWise 2025. It's also reflected in Innovation 2020 and is now the focus of this really excellent Foresight report. Again, I would like to thank Jerry Boyle and Teagasc for this initiative. It's really excellent, and I'm sure you'll have an excellent day here today discussing it. Thank you.